My mentors, whether it was in martial arts, my teachers, or powerlifting, or in my profession, have always been like super brilliant. And sometimes people say, "Well, you're really smart." I'm like, I'm not really smart. I consider myself like just a curious idiot.
Hey there, high performers. This is Dr. Josh Funk. In this podcast, I will be interviewing people from the sports and business world who have experienced hardship and come out on top. Through their challenges, strategies, and mindset, I hope that it will give you the tools you need to perform for life. Hey, high performers. This is Dr. Josh Funk. I am very, very excited to be bringing to you somebody who, when I was starting my career as a small business owner, I was just getting started up, and you often look for people who align with principles in which you value. One of the big principles that we will get into early on in this interview is authenticity, but I'm very, very happy to bring to you Dr. Don Berry.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for being with us today. I mentioned authenticity, and I think the biggest thing that speaks to me when I just think about you is your commitment to your personal fitness and your ability to have that seemingly carry over into every aspect of your life. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've been doing over the course of your lifespan and some things that you're working on currently.
Well, I started out in college studying martial arts. I studied martial arts with Taekwondo, and then later went into the Chinese martial arts and into Filipino martial arts. But mostly I stuck with the Chinese martial arts. I did that for like 40 years. In that course of time, I started to get into kettlebells for my own recovery and strength training. That was a big change. That was probably the biggest change. And I've done that now for 15 years. I've been an instructor under Pavel Tsatsouline. And I'm currently a student of Marty Gallagher and Kirk Kowalski in powerlifting. I am Maryland State's champion in my age group, and I'm 9th in the country. I haven't got the numbers from the last meet. I think I went up a couple. So hopefully I'm up to 7. My goal is to be 3rd this year in 2020 sometime. I've got a big competition coming up. I guess that's in August here at the fairgrounds again in Frederick. So that'll be big. But that's the goal. And I do that for myself. I also do it for my patients. I was never a big athlete. And my thing is, if I can do this, anybody can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think don't be shy here. One of your major goals is a 500-pound squat. I mean, there is nothing to bat an eye at that. I know very, very few people, regardless of age. And while I love Don, I'm not going to age him here, but for those of you listening, right, he does have kids who are in college and beyond, and he is a living, breathing proof that no matter what your age is, you can continue to commit towards goals that are going to improve not just your physical well-being, but your mental, emotional well-being as well. Yeah.
Exercise is huge. I mean, there was a great book, Sparks, that was out a long time ago.
John Rady.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Great stuff. That was huge, and just the effect of what intense exercise does to the nervous system and how it affects emotions and psychological disorders and learning disorders and all of that. That's a great book. Everybody should read it.
Yeah, no, I agree. My cousin actually exposed that to me. There was a lot of, I think it was introduced right through PE schools, right? And there was a direct tie to attentiveness in the classroom,
right,
academic performance, and then some stuff that definitely tied over to adults as well. But it was a great book. I definitely highly recommend it as well. You heard Don talk a little bit about patience here. He's a chiropractor. So we would be in agreement here. We're rehab professionals. I know a lot of times that from a societal standpoint, in terms of how people view our professions, they might view them to be very, very different. But through conversations with you, I'm just very aware that we view our professions to actually be almost one and the same in terms of what evidence-based medicine or evidence-based research is showing. Don is what I would call more movement-focused chiropractor. He focuses a lot more on empowerment of the people that he works with. Don, tell me a little bit about kind of how you found the field of chiropractic and what your evolution has been like to what you currently employ with the patients you work with today.
I started out, I was actually a psych student at UMBC. And it was my junior year, and I was getting ready. I was taking Taekwondo at the time, and I was getting ready for my brown belt test, which was a big deal. But my patella kept dislocating whenever I did these hook or spinning kicks, and I'm sure it was a technical flaw. I don't really know the gist of it, but I went to a trainer, I went to a physical therapist, and every time I kicked, it would pop out. And I eventually went to an orthopedist from Hopkins. And I always talk about this. It's like, an orthopedist from Johns Hopkins, that's who God answers to, right? You know what I mean? They're way up there. Anyway, his approach was, I was 21. He was going to fuse my leg. That was his treatment. I'm going to fuse your leg. So
I've never even heard of that, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Well, we're talking 1980, right? So we're,
yeah.
So that was the treatment. And I'm looking at him like, dude, I can run, I can hop, I can walk. You do this to me, I'll be a cripple at 40. Right.
Yeah.
So I went back to class, and I'm handing in my gi, and I'm talking to a classmate of mine, Pat Dougal from Dundalk. And I said, Pat, man, I got to quit. I don't have anything else to do. And he says, well, Don, why don't you go see my uncle? He's a chiropractor. And I look at him like, what the hell is a chiropractor? I didn't even know, man. Yeah. So I go to this guy, and I'm kind of nervous about it. And I go down in this building, in this basement in Baltimore, and the dude, he does ultrasound, right? Yeah. He does ultrasound on my knee because it's swollen. And then he shows me some exercise for my VMO, which is so important, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't know, it worked. I think maybe I cleaned up my technical stuff. Maybe that's what it is.
You didn't quite wave the magic wand.
Right.
You were all better.
I was all better. Yeah, but the experience when I was in there was, he was happy. His patients were happy. Mm-hmm. And sitting in the lobby, it was like testimony hour at church. They were all telling me their story about they've been here, been there, and, he fixed their back. And I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. What is this? So my roommate and I, we tore the yellow pages out of the Baltimore yellow pages, and we visited all 16 chiropractors in Baltimore. We took half of them on one Friday and half of them the other Friday. And our conclusion was they were happy. So we went to chiropractic school.
That's awesome. You were like, this is the magic place where everybody just becomes happy. Yeah, happiness school.
Happy. They were all content with their jobs and their patients were happy.
Right.
Versus the psychology professors and psychiatrists, they were miserable. They were chain smoking, grumpy, pill taking. They were a mess. And I'm like, I don't want to be like that guy. I want to be like those guys. They're happy. So that's what got me into it.
No, absolutely. I mean, for you, so you experience an injury. It's not that much different than my story, to be honest. I was at Ohio State. I got hurt. The person that I worked with through PT, through rehabbing my injury, Janine Allman, she's an assistant athletic director now.
Oh, cool.
She transitioned out of PT towards more of the athletic director side of things. But I enjoyed being around her. I enjoyed conversing with her. She was a very pleasant person to be around. And I view that mentorship time period or that relationship as something that was significant enough for me to want to spend the rest of my life doing this profession. You mentioned, the chiropractors you interacted with and just the field as a whole. Tell me a little bit more about some people who not only ideally influenced the profession that you chose, but ideally your evolution. I know there's different ways of maybe doing chiropractic, much like there are different branches of physical therapy in terms of focus, in terms of how people do things. Who influenced you the most over the years?
First thing I would have to say is when I picked up a kettlebell and I met Brett Jones. Once I met Brett Jones, you meet, Greg Cook, so it's just like Greg Cook. So you meet him, you know what I mean? So that was a turning point. That was a hard right. And, there's a saying that the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. And I had been one of those guys that wasn't really just to go straight to chiropractic. There's usually two schools. There's the straights and the mixers. And the mixers are the guys like I was that did physical therapy modalities like stim and heater passive modalities and some silly TheraBand exercises, and that's pretty much all we did, and adjusted and adjusted and adjusted, versus the straights who were promoting that everything comes from the spine and just adjust and adjust and adjust. So I was never in that camp. But when I picked up the kettlebell, then I learned the principles of looking at movement. And if somebody comes in with knee pain, I'm not just treating the knee. I'm not treating the source. I'm looking at their ankle mobility and their hip mobility, and I'm looking for dysfunction and other things. And that's where the FMS came in. And that's actually where we met, right? In Philly.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So that was a long time ago. And who knew, right?
Before I was doing anything remotely close to Frederick, right? At that point in time.
Yeah.
I mean, so
yeah. So that was the big change. And I'll tell you, for 2 to 3 years, it was like drinking water from a fire hose every day. It was just like there was so much new information and new ways of thinking, DNS, PIR, all these different things that I had never heard of, SFMA. Oh gosh, where do I start? And Brett Jones really took me by the hand. Says you need to do the FMS first, and then once you get that, then you do your SFMA, and then you do DNS or whatever other ones. But get that base down, and that's what I did. And then we did the CKFMS at the time with the RKC, which was a wonderful event because it was 3 days with Brett and Cook, and Charlie Weingroff was my roommate. So I mean, it was just like a fire hose experience. But it was those were the changing points, and that was hard because I had to come back, and I'm teaching people different exercises and looking at movement differently, and patients were like, this is different. But what that allowed me to do is empower them to fix themselves. Right, that's what it's about. So that was the turning point.
I think when I have conversations with you, and it's something I definitely really, really appreciate through our, just interactions, is you're somebody who seems to be continually curious. You are a, constant learner. You practice what I would call, a Shoshin type mentality or beginner's mentality. And that's something I'm always, just kind of admirable of people who keep that. I think it's just critical. I think we talk about things like fulfillment. It's an essential part of fulfillment because that's the only way that we just keep growing and we keep looking back on, say, what we did 5 to 10 years ago and kind of going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's what I was thinking or that's what I was doing.
That's right.
Where are you at right now with regards to things that interest you or things maybe surrounding your profession that you're trying to do your best to continually be a part of the change?
Right now I'm studying with Craig Liebenson a lot, and I'm reading through his book, which is a great new volume 3 of his Rehab of the Spine, which is really good. And he really breaks down in the biopsychosocial model and gamification of rehabilitation, all of that. That's the big thing right now for me.
I love those two, by the way. Those are things I'll definitely leave in the links for this interview. Yeah,
that's like huge for me right now, and getting that. The other thing that really intrigues me, because I was exposed to it, is Mulligan technique. I want to learn more about that. I did do McKinsey but I want to do the whole thing because I like their extremity approach that I've seen. I like that. So that's really got me fired up in the next coursework that I do, which is basic for most PTs, I think, but for me, it's not. It's new. It's fresh.
Yeah, and I think we can sit here and admittedly, like, we probably have a lot better of awareness of some of this stuff, and I think we could probably nerd out and talk about all the different intricacies of rehab. But if I were to maybe communicate this to the listeners, I would almost categorize all of these things as following under an umbrella of empowerment. When I think of the word empowerment, often I'm also going to think of things like education, things like strategies, but ideally like things that never leave the patients, or we've even got to the point where we're just calling them clients, but moving from a passive approach, right? How do we remove things like heat, ice, e-stim, maybe something physically being done to somebody, things that are being viewed more passively, and ideally get to an active approach as quickly as possible, or almost in certain situations, first.
Well, that's exactly what Craig says. And it's hard for me to do that sometimes because I have some old school tendencies still. But, Craig is like start with the exercises first. Start with the movement stuff first. And if they're stuck, then you do your manual therapy and get them out there. They see the change, and then they keep the change because we've loaded it and we've loaded a pattern, and they keep that sticks,
Right.
versus the whole thing, that adjustment didn't hold, doc. You know what I mean? That's stuff.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, we could look at our respective professions and some of the things that people come in. And I think overall, where we're failing people from a professional standpoint is connecting the medical side of the spectrum where you have pain and injury to, honestly, the fitness world.
Right.
We have a big gap. We get people back to pain-free, and we don't have conversations with people or provide them with knowledge and strategies to ideally allow them to help get to this point where they're independent. They know how their body moves more often. They know how to modify the exercises in which they're doing. They're able to be aware of, symptoms that may or may not pop up that they could even be in control of if we adequately prepare them. How do you take people who maybe have this mindset of needing to be fixed and ideally change the narrative and provide them with the opportunity to realize that they're a lot more in control than they even have ever realized?
I think a lot of it, I try to get people to read. I like back mechanic for the people that come to me. Most of my patients that come to me with, it's back pain. And I send them with Stu McGill's book on the back, and empower them and tell them this is what this is empowering you to fix your stuff, look for the pain generators, see what's going on, remove those, so that they've got to find that pain generator. What is it? I sit here, I do this, they make that change. We look at that. Just addressing their history and their goals in that initial exam. And the biggest thing that I really fault the established, healthcare professionals, regardless, chiropractors, surgeons, whatever, it's the nocebo effect and how they scare the patient. And it's, oh my God, I've got degenerative disc. And so they're ready to just die, because they're scared.
Right.
And when you get fear and pain living together in this brain, that's the cascade that causes the whole long-term chronicity.
Right.
And it's just watch the clinicians, watch what you say. Watch what you say.
Especially with what we know surrounding the literature. I mean, you brought it up earlier, right? We're moving away from this structural explanation for pain. Just because you have pain doesn't mean there's anything remotely relevant to an image. You could have pain, and that image might be just like everybody else's, in which honestly we're recognizing that an abnormal finding is often normal. And if I'm being candid, I mean, there are certain ages, it's no secret, as we get older, we have wrinkles. As we get older, the structural parts of our body are just not going to look as they used to look.
That's right. It's normal changing. And, and that's one of the best parts of the back mechanic, where he says, the degenerative disc disease is gray hair. Right. It's just, it's the same thing, let it go. But they've been scared, and, a lot of times that fear is done in the case of marketing. I got to speak only to my profession, right? Where they come in and they take that x-ray and they throw it up on the view box and they say, oh my God, you've got degenerative disc disease. Look at these bone spurs and your neck is straight and not curved. And you need to come in here, blah, blah, 3 times a week for 6 months and we'll fix it. That's awful.
Yeah. You're running into situations where then every time people have pain, they're automatically pointing to an image, which from a locus of control standpoint automatically goes from internal to external, a lack of control versus being able to take control of the situation, where, I mean, we're learning things about pain where your pain sensitivity ratings can even be influenced by things like sleep. So
100%.
We have a complete model, or we should say a more complete model with biopsychosocial, where we do have these biological factors that obviously are important. I mean, sometimes you're going to have tissue trauma and there's going to be pain that happens as a result of it. But let's not also forget that pain is socialized, and sometimes there are psychological things that are
And
all
cultural.
at play, and the cultural side of things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, let's take two different parents. One, a kid falls every single time. Everybody's up in arms and they're making loud noises, and there's this fear and anxiety that gets created in this young person every time that they have this little physical sensation.
Right.
Or the parent over here that, hey, you just fell? Are you good? Okay, cool. I'm going to act exactly how you are because I'm not going to want to put these expectations on you in terms of what and how you should feel. So it's just so multifactorial. And sometimes you brought it up in the beginning, like patient-centered interviewing. How do I have a conversation with this person? Let them tell their story.
Amen.
How do I let them tell their story? How do I make sure that they're in the driver's seat, and I start peeling back some of these layers that unfortunately we're going to have to potentially pull them out of, and it's not going to take one visit. Ideally, I'm not running into a situation where I have to see them with a high frequency. I mean, 3 times a week, I could go down a whole separate rabbit hole when it comes to things that I think probably aren't best practice. But getting back on subject here, what are some things that you think are critical to people who interact with rehab to professionals to ideally get the most out of their experience and ideally continue to find themselves in a position where they are going to rehab professionals who are serving more in this consultant role and less of a fixer?
Well, I think the patient needs to ask a lot of questions and get educated. I think they do need to know that they are in charge. Like you said, they are in charge, and they can fix their own stuff because honestly, they broke it. Like my dad would say, "You broke it, you fix it, kid." You know what I mean? That's
right.
So, I mean, we're there as coaches and as clinicians and manual therapists too, a little bit, right? And we minimize that because we don't want them to become dependent on a clinician.
Right.
Independence through education,
you talk about independence, dependence, right? When I think of dependence, often the word chronic comes to mind.
Right.
And I'll just go ahead and go down this rabbit hole with scheduling and stuff like that. But like 3 times a week, you don't give a person any opportunity to actually manage life and learn and have new awareness created in between sessions.
Right.
If every single person that walks through the door is, I need to see you 3 times a week for X amount of time. Right. Not to mention the fact that in a PT standpoint, sometimes you only have 30 visits. And if 3 times a week for 4 weeks, every single person that comes through the door, and I knock off more than a third of your visits in January, I don't think with any kind of clear conscience that I'm putting that person in a position to be successful over the course of the year. Right. Then you have 18 visits for 11 months. Well, what are you going to do when there's something actually like catastrophic and a person needs to see a clinician for 6 months at a time? So
post-surgical or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, they'd be a mess. I tell you, Dr. Sarman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shirley. Good old Shirley. She's got some great books out there too.
Yeah. So, and what she said that really got me was just that, about better clinicians get paid less, and it's true. If you look at the chiropractic business model that we had, it was always PVA, patient retention, patient visit average. Your patient visit average should be 30. You should see people 30 times. And I looked at that, when she said that, it's like, you should be ashamed. You should be ashamed of yourself. You shouldn't be able to sleep. You're just seeing how much insurance visits you can get. Right. You're not interested in helping these people. Come on.
No.
There was one, this guy gave they were making fun of him on the site I belong to on the Forward Thinking Chiropractic Alliance. And there was a guy, he gave a cup to his patient for his 10,000 visit. You should have bought the guy a car, man.
God,
like a Bugatti.
Kids to go through college, on his own. That's crazy.
That's crazy. That's abuse. Wow.
Yes.
So that's why we have all this insurance crap that we have to fill out, all this paperwork, all this crap because people like that.
And that's certainly not going to help our reimbursement because in situations like that, people become a dollar amount. They become the black and white strictly on a P&L or a balance sheet. Yeah. And we have this business focused situation instead of one that is at least what I would view. I mean, I'm a big believer that conscious capitalism can exist. How
Yeah.
can I deliver a combination of what might be best practice? If you come see me,
Right.
there might be a varied time that I need to see each individual person. But the problem with that is it's not repeatable. So at some point, I do have to standardize the length of visits relatively,
Right.
but also being in a situation where I'm not just asking the question, how many people can I get through the door to maximize profits? So a happy medium being something that we feel very, very strongly about at Rehab to Perform, that's going to ideally allow us to deliver the best blend, right? It's the best blend. And ideally, when you talk about some of the metrics, not to say that we don't look at PVA, but you know what I want to know is I want to know what's PVA for the profession, right? And then not only that, what are the outcomes for the profession?
Right.
So if I can deliver superior outcomes in 1, 2, 3 less visits, I feel very, very strongly that we're doing a lot of the right things.
That's right.
And those are the questions that we're asking ourselves.
Right. Good.
Yeah. And
Good
I think
stuff.
sometimes when we talk about numbers too, I mean, you'll go down, a rabbit hole of, hey, sometimes people are just focused on volume and you just pack people into the doors.
Right.
And you know what you lose track of? When people actually drop off because you're just so worried about being slammed. Oh, somebody dropped off. Oh, it's good. Just stack another person behind them and we're good. When in all reality, like we should be focusing on things, and some of the other business professionals will hear this, but like churn rate, when people drop off within 3 visits, those are your lost opportunities.
Right.
Those are the people that you're losing the ability to make tremendous impact on. And if you're just focused on driving people in and slamming them in through the doors, you're losing those people. And I'll guarantee it. And if you start looking at like the benchmark in terms of what a churn rate should be and where yours at, I'm going to guarantee that it's something that, it's a problem.
Right. That's
so
right.
I know we went on a little bit of a sidebar there, and hopefully some of the people just appreciate the fact that we're fighting a lot of the same fights on a regular basis.
That's right.
It doesn't necessarily matter that your designation is chiropractic, mine's PT. We're both trying to redefine expectations with our professions. We're trying to redefine expectations with healthcare. It takes a lot of hard work, but through conversations with you, you've also mentioned the fact that it's one thing to work hard, but if your work ain't great, you need to be resourceful. You need to be asking the right questions. You need to get new perspective. Otherwise, your work is only going to get you so far. So talk about that mindset and maybe what point or what was the turning point to you having that kind of a mindset?
I like I said earlier, I have one of my characteristics is stubbornness. I'm persistent, and persistence is great for strength training. It's great for a lot of things, it really is. But the problem with persistence is sometimes you get stuck and you are just working hard and you can't see what's going on. So thankfully, I have been able to have relationships with good mentors, and you can ask questions like, man, I'm stuck. This isn't working. What's going on? Craig Liebenson has been the biggest for me anyway. He's the guy I can call and say, man, this is what's going on. And you've been good to me, buddy. I mean, big time. And I appreciate the switch in software. That's going to be big. We're getting that down, but that's working. That's going to be huge because that's going to help me keep track of these numbers that we're talking about. And I needed that, because it's frustrating seeing people drop off, all of that. You need software to do that.
It helps keep you accountable.
It helps keep you accountable. And I appreciate it. Yep. So that's going to be a big thing. And we're looking forward to it. And plus, the other thing that, is just to be able to communicate to the medical doctors. I treat all these patients, but I'm not communicating with them like I should.
Right.
That will help me with that.
Right. And I think just, getting back to, peeling back the layers of some of the stuff that's going on there. It goes back to your just ability to be curious. I think you're always seeking stuff out. You're seeking information out. You're seeking best practice out. I don't know a whole lot of people, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but who are probably in the phase of life or the aspect of your career that are necessarily attacking growth the way that you are. And my hat's off to you for that.
I always talk about people that my mentors, whether it was in martial arts, my teachers, or powerlifting, or in my profession, have always been like super brilliant. And sometimes people say, well, you're really smart. I'm not really smart. I consider myself like just a curious idiot. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, that's interesting. What's that? You know?
Yeah.
So it's just like I just like curiosity, you know,
Right.
that it's just like I've always been why does that work that way? You know?
Yeah.
You know, but the really smart people, they're the ones that figured it out and they're doing it. It's like, how did you figure that out? You know?
Yeah.
Like with Craig, he's the same age as me, but he was a year ahead of me in school. And I hated school. I hated what they were teaching. I hated all this stuff. And what did I do? I drank beer and I bitched. You know what he did? He wrote Yonda. He did something. You know,
Yeah.
he did something that changed our worlds in a lot by bringing these people from, you know, the Prague school and all that over here, Levitt, Yonda, all that stuff. That's big, you know. So instead of just drinking beer.
Yeah, but I think having interactions with him and you, and don't sell yourself short. I can be self-deprecating sometimes with regards to the position that I'm in or how I view myself and kind of where I'm at. But I do think there's still something about both of you, and honestly, probably all three of us, where there's never a moment where I think either one of us is running into a situation where we're afraid to maybe feel vulnerable or put ourselves in a position of vulnerability and say, hey, you know what? I don't know. Or, hey, I know that I'm doing a decent job of this, but I'm sure that there's better. And I think that's such a critical trait when it comes to people maximizing themselves.
Right. I think, you know, chasing better is just, I got that from my dad. My dad was a machinist of all things, right? But he was really driven to be the best at it. And he always was that example. You know, he worked at the Bureau of Standards, which is what I forget it now, but he worked at the Bureau. He was a machinist there at his own shop, you know, and it was like a big deal. We worked on crazy stuff, you know, where engineers would come and ask him, will this work? And he's no, you know, you know, and Dad was just a blue collar guy with not even a high school education, GED, you know, so he drove me in that regard to always try to be the best at your field, the best you can be, you know.
Right. Everybody's potential is different. And I think the thing that sometimes happens, I remember even going through like clinicals from a physical therapy standpoint and just being so underwhelmed sometimes with some of the professionals that I would run into. And I'd be like, we're learning in school that people did what you're doing 15 years ago. Like, you haven't adapted. You've literally become a dinosaur based on choice and choice alone. So at some point, that person lost the curiosity. They lost the eagerness. They lost the drive, the giddiness to wake up every day and say, you know what? I'm in this amazing position to make people, much like you said in the beginning, happy and to change their lives. Right. I mean, it comes full circle. Like, we're change agents, but ideally we can be a great source of happiness for people.
That's right. You know, and that's it. You know, I mean, I think about, like, I used to have a mission statement when there was a big thing, and the mission statement I had was, you know, man, I wanted to change the world. It was that simple. And I saw it as like people come to me in pain, and if I can help them get rid of pain, I haven't changed the world, but I changed theirs. You know, they can play with their grandkids and do the laundry without hurting.
Absolutely.
You know, so those are big things because it's a ripple effect. They affect their spouse, their coworkers and whatnot, you know?
Right.
So that's how I've always looked at it, you know? You know, and now, because I am almost 60, and just to say, you know, it's really a weird thing because you'll see this and you probably see it, but I'm still 19, man. I don't know. Everybody else is getting older. And it's really weird because, you know, I think about when I was 28 years old here in Frederick working, well, I'm treating their grandkids now.
Right.
And it's like I watched this all pass, but I'm still 28, right? I'm still 28. You know, it's kind of a weird thing, you know?
Yeah. But it is. I mean, it's this mindset. And I think the commitment to your growth, much like we talked about, like with authenticity, right? How are we going to get people to grow who are working with us on bettering themselves if we're not actively benefiting ourselves?
Right.
And then when you talk about like things like team, like, are the coaches growing so that their players grow? Are the parents growing so that kids are growing? I mean, I just look at ourselves, like, if I'm not doing things individually to better myself, how do I expect the people that show up every day and are working towards the same mission to
Right.
collectively grow.
Right.
Growth is something that it can
Yeah.
be contagious.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the biggest thing with me for aging is not getting stuck. I was stuck for a bit. I was stuck in what I'd learned, and I was learning some rehab stuff, but it was all old and having to do with just stupid ideas that have been thrown out. Um, and I was really stuck. And what I learned was to be able to question deeply held beliefs. And that was what I got from Brett is
Right.
I had to let go a lot of that crap. And I still have to. I mean, from where I started and what I learned in the beginning of the FMS and what I believed it was and what I believe it is now are different things, right?
Right.
And it's not that is a bad tool. I still use it, but I don't use it like I did.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I've grown.
Right.
And even in kettlebell world, I at one time kettlebells were all I did, and now I'm more of a power lifter, and I use kettlebells for my cardio and for my mobility work.
I can
Change.
definitely relate to some of the stuff. I mean, I remember going down deep into certain rabbit holes and being more of, I wouldn't say like straight with how regards to you defined it, but
Yeah.
more of like a particular way of thinking. And I was diving deep there. And now I definitely appreciate more of the mixer and trying to pull best practices from a variety of people, different, what do we call it, principles or systems or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, getting to a point where I had a previous conversation with the other podcast. You're alchemizing. We're continually alchemizing best practices to ideally create this best version of ourselves.
Right. That's what Craig always says. Take the principles, throw out the gurus. Because a lot of times we get into the camp mentality, tribe mentality. And, I've been there. I've been there a lot, especially in martial art world. Right. Oh my gosh. Martial art world is a big tribe mentality. Yeah. It's us against everybody else, and everybody else is doing it wrong, And, exercise, I see it all the time. You just talk about how somebody squats or how somebody deadlifts. It's like, oh, that's all wrong. It's like, oh, I don't know. They just pulled 750 and they're not hurting. And, they're doing different than me. It worked for them.
Right.
I can't do that, but they do.
Right. Appreciating the ranges, the spectrum, and that there sometimes is a lot of things work, right? There's definitely some things that are not beneficial or not good, but there's definitely more than one way to make it happen.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of roads to Rome.
Yep. So before we wrap up here, I really want to hear what recommendations you have for the adult who is trying to be more active, who maybe is focused a little bit too much on external benchmarks and the fitness that they don't have, the body that they don't have. What are some just general recommendations that person can own and ideally take with them as they maybe not get to a point where they have accumulated their greatest strength in their life at almost 60, but they're working towards being better at 48 than they were at 47, and ideally are able to incrementally put themselves in a better situation for longevity?
I'm going to just say what I think about that is find a trainer that's older than 50. I think to spend a little time with a trainer who understands what it's like to be in a 50-year-old body versus a 28-year-old. Karen Smith is a Strong First instructor, and I love her. She's a head instructor. And she said, she had a radical hysterectomy because of some issues and then some health problems and stuff because of that and hormonal changes. And she said, I need to apologize to all of my prior clients that I was training when I was younger because I was telling them to do more and do this and do all these things. And she said they couldn't do it. And I was thinking, well, you're just being a sissy or being lazy. And it wasn't it. Now I understand that, I think having goals in just being able to move better, to not hurt when you do the laundry and you play with your grandkids and you do stuff, you should be able to do whatever you want. I always tell people, don't be a wasbee. Get back in the game, man. You know what I mean? Even if it's playing basketball, if that was your thing when you were 20, well, and go play basketball, but don't play with the 20-year-olds, don't be, because if you're a guy, the Y chromosome comes on. I know. I got one. I do stupid stuff. I did stupid stuff this weekend. Marty got me fired up, and he said something. I took it as a challenge. So I wanted to see how many times I could squat, 255. So I did it for 16 times, so I can't walk today.
Yeah.
I'm guilty, I shouldn't have let him get in my head.
But you haven't focused you haven't had that particular mindset all the time.
No.
You've done things that have been sustainable.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing, just hearing some of this stuff is just like the practice, the commitment to practice, the commitment to like reasonable goals, the commitment that you have to sometimes just listening to yourself. And then once again, like be resourceful, right?
Right.
It's one thing to work hard. It's also another thing to work hard
Ask for
and
help.
have the right things going on.
Right.
So
ask for help.
So to wrap up today, what are you currently working on? What are you offering? And then potentially just give a little plug to ways that people can reach out to you.
Right now, I'm working on getting that 500 squat, buddy. I mean, I'm working hard. Geez, I'll flip, and I'm working on my health issues because I am, I am 59 and I'll be 60 in July. I've got Hashimoto's disease and diverticulitis. It comes with age, and I take care of myself. I do the things, I sleep, I eat better and all this stuff, but I have things to manage and I'm still going to hit that goal. As far as what I'm trying to do in my profession is just learn more, continue to learn, look for different opportunities from different people to be a better clinician, and help people feel better and move better and live better, period. That's my slogan, I just, that's what you got to do. And I'm at Barry Chiropractic, and just look us up in Frederick. I'm glad to help you.
And don't sell yourself short on the pole barn of muscle. All right. It's a separate subject in itself, but he's got a pretty impressive home gym, and
it's crazy.
There's frequently some good groups of people over there.
Yeah, Marty Gallagher and Kirk Kowalski, and Kirk is the first guy to squat 1,000 for a double, and he's a Maryland boy. And they come up to my house every Sunday, and Kirk drives all the way from Bowie, and Marty drives all the way from Waynesboro, and we have people that are beginners, old people, lifters, broken up people, that were lifters before, all just having fun and getting better and getting stronger every Sunday.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I see all the shenanigans on social media, so sometimes I feel like I'm living it with you. But Don, I just want to say thank you once again for making time for us today. You've definitely been somebody I've looked up to. Your authenticity and just your overall curious mindset are the two things that stand out, and I'm sure everybody's going to take a lot from today's interview.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the High Performers Podcast. We want to encourage you to join the conversation, access the show notes, and catch our latest episodes on the website. Please head to highperformerspodcast.com. And if you enjoyed the podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, thanks again for listening.